Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. So I really struggled with what to tell you all today. I mean, how am I supposed to tell all of you all about myself in just a few minutes? I didn't even know where to start. I thought about maybe telling you about my jobs, working as the associate editor or working at the after-school program, but that didn't seem quite right. Then I decided, well, maybe I should talk about my friends, my hometown. Still, didn't seem quite right. So then I started thinking about some of my interests. Reading, cooking, superheroes. Superheroes. That was it. My love of superheroes is the one thing that I can tell all of you about that will best portray who I am. My living room is decorated with superheroes. I own probably at least a dozen superhero t-shirts, and my favorite tennis shoes have Spider-Man on them. Looking back on my life, I've always loved superheroes, but I didn't always know it. When I was a very little girl, I didn't love the same superheroes I love now that you can find in comic books and in the movies. But I did have one particular superhero that was with me my entire life, and she taught me so much. So I thought there was no better way to tell you about myself than to tell you the story of my favorite superhero, the most important woman in the world. She wasn't your average superhero. She couldn't leap tall buildings in a single bound, and she didn't have super strength. In fact, she was disabled and spent much of her adult life confined to a wheelchair or using a cane in order to walk. She was not amphibious, nor did she have any control over the elements. In fact, she was only a mortal, like any of us. But she had some other powers that were equally important, and she was kind enough to share those powers with me throughout my life. What are those powers, you may ask? Well, her first power is the power of creativity. She had the ability to look at mundane objects and find the beauty in any of those objects and turn them into something magnificent. She was fantastic at all things creative. She could dance, she could sing, she could write, she was artistic and could paint. Absolutely wonderful. Me, on the other hand, I've not been so lucky. I can draw stick figures, poorly, and my singing voice makes neighborhood dogs howl. But whenever I wanted to try something new and creative, I knew that I had my superhero support 100%, no matter how terrible I was at it. So when I was 14 years old, I finally found my creative outlet that I was actually good at. I was so excited. It was ballroom dancing. I was so excited that I would rush back to the most important woman in the world after every lesson and hurriedly teach her everything I had learned. Together, she and I would waltz and laugh our way around my living room. And in those moments, it seemed like time stood still because we were so happy with what we were doing. And that's how she taught me the power of creativity and personal joy. Her second power was the power of compassion. I remember when I was 12 years old, my best friend told me that she and her family would not be able to celebrate Christmas that year because her father couldn't afford to buy any presents for them. I was very upset and I rushed back to my superhero to tell her, and she immediately formed a plan of action. She didn't have very much money because she was disabled and couldn't work, but she still went out and she bought a present for my friend and both of her siblings. She then made Christmas cookies and went through all of her own personal Christmas decorations, and we put everything in a box and delivered it to my friend's house while they were not home, with a note that says everybody deserves to know the joy of Christmas. And in that moment, I saw the compassion and respect that she had for my best friend's family, even though she didn't even know them particularly well. And I decided from that point on that that was how I was going to strive to live my life and to treat others with the same compassion and respect that she did. This had an unexpected result, and I have found my calling working with autistic youth in Salinas, California. Her third power was the power of love. She had the biggest heart of anybody I'd ever met. She would immediately welcome people into her home and into her heart and love them like she'd known them her entire life. This was probably her greatest power, but it was also her greatest weakness. You see, love had the ability to blind her from the current realities that she was facing, and she wound up in an extremely violent relationship because she was so blinded by her love for her abuser to realize how toxic he was. This was probably the hardest lesson that I learned from her because I saw how bad that it was for her. But in the end, my love of my superhero overcame my fear of love in general. And that love for her has made me into the advocate against domestic violence that I am now and that I plan to be for the rest of my life. So those are her powers. They may seem a bit ordinary at first, but to me, there's so much more. because the most important woman in the world was my mother. The most unique thing about her is that she didn't realize she was a superhero. Nobody did. Nobody told her. Not until it was too late. It was on January 7, 2005, the most important woman in the world passed away due to heart failure. The final chapter of the life and times of the most important woman in the world will be coming to an end next week, as my brother, my sister, and I gather together in our hometown in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountain range to say our final goodbyes to our superhero and to spread her ashes. She's responsible for creating the woman that you see before you today. She taught me so many things, but perhaps most importantly, she taught me that not all superheroes have superpowers like you see in the movies, and that sometimes you just need to look inside of yourself, and with a little bit of creativity, compassion, and love, you can be the superhero that you were meant to be. Thank you.